ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā kairanga, ngā hauewha, tēnā tātou katoa. Close enough. Can you hear me now? Ka pai. Te pā o rā kaihautu, why school is not the answer. Today I'm going to do something that I don't normally do, which is try and stick to my script. Because I'm a shocker. Once I get into something that I have a lot of love and passion for, I can talk for days. So I'm going to try and keep looking at my screen and keep myself to time because I have a time limit. And I brought today with me some of our pununga from Te Pā o Rā Kaihautu who I think are more important for you to see and hear. So they'll be sharing a little bit of their story with you today as well. So, Te Pā o Rā Kaihautu, why school is not the answer, may sound a bit counterintuitive, and I'm going to challenge us even a little bit more and say it's not even the question. But before I go there, I'm going to share a little story with you about a 5-year-old rangimarie. The story of rangimarie is not as traumatic as the one we just heard from Tupua, and I mihi to him for being 21 years old and he's figured it out. That's amazing. But anyway, picture this. And I'll push a button. Well, wasn't I cute? The 5-year-old rangimarie, I probably was about 6 or 7 in this photo. But picture rangimarie, immaculately dressed. It's her first day of school. Her mum has got her all dressed up in an identical outfit to her sister, who is blonde and blue-eyed. And we're walking to school, and I'm holding on to my mum, and she's trying to keep up with me because I'm dragging her. I'm so excited. It's my first day going to school. I've got one tooth missing. My hair's up in a ribbon and wearing one of Mum's hand-knitted, bright green with tickies on it jersey, going to school. Fast forward, less than a month later, and rangimarie is dragging her feet. She's crying. She doesn't want to go to school. She's trying to find a way to knock out her other tooth so she can stay home. And then the dreaded phone call from the school to her mum, asking her to come in for a meeting because something's clearly wrong with this child. She won't participate in class. She's stopped reading. She won't listen. She might even have learning difficulties. If anyone knows my mum, and those of you that do know my mum, sat me down straight away. And the 5-year-old rangimarie explained to her in her 5-year-old way that she was being made fun of, that the kids were calling her a dumb Māori, that they said her name funny. Even the teachers said her name funny, Rangi Marie. She didn't know who that was. And she wanted to hang with her friends, and they all hang at the back of the classroom so that the teacher wouldn't ask them questions. So, knowing my mum, she marched down to the school. She walked in to talk to my teacher. They were puzzled. What's happened? They'd sent to school a happy, bright child that was already reading and attempting to write her overly long name. And now they have a problem child with learning difficulties. She marches in the next day and she fights for me. She fights to have the bullying stopped. She fights to have my name said properly. She fights to have me moved to the front of the class so I don't miss out on what's going on. I wish rangimarie's story was a one-off, or all that was then, the 60s. Yes, I'm that old. And that just wouldn't happen today in New Zealand. But of course, that's not the way it is. Fast forward another whole generation, and a group of mates meet in an Irish bar in the middle of Christchurch. It's 1993. They're all young, child-free and stupid. And over a glass of bourbon, they hatch a plan to start their own kapa haka. They share a passion for haka. Most of them share similar backgrounds. Grew up in their pās, educated in Māori boarding schools. And what started out as just a place to get their haka fix very quickly morphed into something so much more than they ever imagined. By 2001, there were 25 babies strapped on their backs, running up and down in their ranks. And so in a haze of sleep deprivation, and this time not over a bottle of bourbon, but over breastfeeding and coffee, a bunch of desperate kapahaka housewives launched their own version of what we thought early childhood learning should be, Nōku Te Ao. We wanted it all, hence the name, Nōku Te Ao, the world is mine. We wanted quality education, quality te reo me ona tikanga, quality facilities, the best kaiako, and we were prepared to make it happen. Our kids, our responsibility. It certainly wasn't easy, and every barrier we could possibly hit, we hit. The ministry declined our first application, and I feel deja vu today as I go into battle again with the ministry this afternoon. So they declined our application to fund a centre because we had made the fatal mistake of starting before they said we could. And we were up and running too quickly. The ministry wanted to put a wall in the middle of our centre so that we could separate the under twos and over twos because, you know, it's dangerous to have under twos and over twos in the same space because we all put that wall in our sitting rooms at home. So, of course, we fought back. We pushed back, and our compromise in the end, because we weren't going to budge and put a horrible wall through the middle of Nōku Te Ao, and the compromise in the end was when ministry visited, we would wheel across a little set of shelves on some wheels, and they would see some separation, and when they left, we would wheel it back. We learnt much in those formative years of Nōku Te Ao, and more than anything else, we learnt the importance of having a strong kaupapa, people willing to do the mahi and just sheer persistence. Because there are so many people working hard in the opposite direction. So you could be forgiven for thinking, well, that should be enough, but no, our whānau wanted more. All very well producing graduates from Nōku Te Ao who believe the world is theirs, only to see them hit the same walls that 5-year-old Rangi Māori hit in 1969. So another decade later, we decided to take on the whole education system, because that's what you do, from early childhood to tertiary. And the long and torturous birthing process of Te Pāo Rā Kaihautu began, this time over a bottle of hard liquor again. I shouldn't be saying this in front of you, should I? Just block your ears on that one. So, I better keep pushing the right buttons, shouldn't I? So in June 2009, 7 years after we'd launched Nōku Te Ao, we gathered a small group of us together around that bottle and started talking about the big why. Why did we have to do this? The stats were alarming. Our tamariki are leaving school earlier and with fewer qualifications. We're almost 3 times more likely to leave school with little or no qualification. Christchurch had the highest rates of Māori students in Year 11 that failed literacy and numeracy. We were 2 times more likely than non-Māori to be stood down. If you look at the typical pipeline for Māori students, of every 100 students, over 1/3 will have left school before making it to first base, NCA level 1. Over half have left before second base, level 2. And we're left with 14 out of 100 that might make it to tertiary. I got the most current stats, and it has improved. There are now 16 that might make it to university. It's pretty horrifying, eh? And we're marching about everything else, but look at those stats. So, establishing the why was a no-brainer. Establishing the what was a bigger challenge. To establish what we wanted, we needed to first ask the right questions. So I'm back to that first one. When the Americans and the Russians were battling it out to get the first man on the moon, they had to solve a complex problem. They needed to invent a pen that could write where there was no gravity. Ink needs to have some gravity to come down to the nib. The Americans poured huge money and time into designing a pen that would work in space. In the meanwhile, the Russians gave their astronauts a pencil. By asking the question, how do we get a pen to write in space, the Americans preempted the solution by embedding the answer. The answer is a pen. The Russians, on the other hand, didn't ask how do we get a better pen, they asked how do we write in space. So we did the same thing. We didn't ask, how do we build a better school, which immediately implies that school is the answer. We asked, how do our tamariki learn best? And when we looked at what worked in our own learning experiences, invariably the answers did not lie in schools, as we knew them, but in all those extracurricular activities and experiences we had on our marae, at wānanga, at kapahaka practice, on hikoi, in the kitchen, around the table, on the sports fields, when we were doing the things we loved to do. And they were not at school. So, what might have been a straightforward discussion about how do we make a better school very quickly morphed into a far-reaching and ongoing discussion that continues to this day as we totally unbundle school as we knew it and resurrect in its place a 21st century pā wānanga. The unbundling process involved not only reframing a whole lot of questions, but also redesigning and redefining education. And we called that learnscaping, because we're pretty clever with words. And most of that learnscaping actually involved problem solving. How do we re-engage whānau who have had bad experiences in their own school lives? How do we raise expectations? How do we reconnect our whānau, many of whom have been away from their marae and tūranga waiwai for 2 or 3 generations? How do we make the whole learning experience more fun? Radical idea. These problems were already well documented and manifest in the present underachievement of Māori students over more than 100 years. The only good thing I can say about the persistent low achievement for Māori is that we've learnt a lot of things and we've learnt mostly what doesn't work. So we were ready to go straight to what actually does work. Redefining for us started with relanguaging. We set about overhauling education as we knew it. I would like to say it was an organised, linear process with a clear line of sight on the end, but it wasn't. We attacked it from all angles and we're not always entirely sure where it would end, and it's still not ended. As it's turned out, it's still nowhere in sight. We're still very much building the plane as we fly it, which can be pretty frightening, especially in that first year. It was really frightening. One of the things we discovered early on, that language plays an important part in shaping our thoughts, and if you change the language, you can change the thinking. If you change the thinking, you can change the action. The word school, for example, already carries a number of preconceptions, feelings, and thoughts, most of which are not pleasant for us. So we very early on stopped using the word and came up with our own descriptor, a pā wānanga, a learning village. And we didn't want teachers and the authority relationships that attach to that word. So we have kaiarahi, navigators, mentors. Relanguaging is just one simple thing that freed us from the stigma attached to the words that we grew up with, the words associated with schools. Eventually, after some months, we landed on a vision that revolved around what we wanted for our whānau. We wanted our whānau, our tamariki, to stand confidently in the world and on strong cultural foundations, equipped to tackle all the world had to offer. We wanted to open a world of possibilities for them, and we knew education was the key to that. From nōku te ao to tū ki te ao, a place where our places are our classrooms, where our people are our teachers, where our learning is exciting, relevant, fun, where our tamariki choose to speak Māori in the playground, where our pauataua and matua can learn alongside their tamariki, where mātauranga Māori is central to the curriculum, not extracurricular, where academic, cultural and sporting brilliance is the norm. It's radical. The answer for us then was not about building a better school. It was about restoring a model we already had, a pā dedicated to educational success for the whole whānau, a pā wānanga, a place where our kids get to be Māori all day long. How many of us had to leave that at the gate to succeed? A pā where our pā kids learn how to swing a tea towel. It's called tea towel tanga at te pā. And crack level 3 chemistry, and bust out a haka just because. A 21st century pāwānanga or learning village that truly provides seamless education from early childhood to tertiary on one site by taking out the walls between early childhood, primary, secondary and tertiary. If you look at the history of where schooling's come from, it's come from the factory era, the industrial era. It was built on the model of factories. There are actually no good reasons why we should have the transition points happening the way they are, where our kids are moving from to whāriki in the early childhood curriculum, which concentrates on the whole child, and then they move into a system that over time narrows the focus down to pure academic. Doesn't work for our kids. We wanted a pā that restores cultural foundations by reinforcing a student's sense of culture, identity and place in the world, deeply embedding our culture, language, values, heritages and experiences at the centre of their learning. I always remember Bentham Ohia often said, "Don't teach me about my culture, but use my culture to teach me." A pā, a model of learning that reconnects our whānau with our places, with our people and our stories, retracing the footsteps of rā kaihautu. Our kids are literally doing this. So for the first time, I went down to Aoraki just 2 years ago. After all of these years of getting up and introducing my maunga, for the first time, I went down to Aoraki 2 years ago with this kaupapa. So it's not only about our kids, it's about their parents, who many of whom, well, all of us, did not have this in our schooling system. A place that reignites a passion for learning. Neuroscience is telling us that up to 60 to 80% of a child's tendencies and talents are already inherited. So it's our job then to use the remaining 20 to 40% to nurture those talents. At the very least, not damage them. To do that, we need to know our kids and we need to know what their talents are and work on those. Too often they're being pushed down lines that are not naturally, don't tap into their natural talents. We wanted a place where we get to push the reset button, because that's what you do when something's broken, and reset the norm for Māori in education. A place that produces graduates inspired by Rā kaihautu himself. That is not Rā kaihautu, that's my mate Timmy. He's purple in this photo. And Rā kaihautu, he lit the fires of occupation here in Te Waipounamu. With his core, he carved out the lakes and the rivers. And we wanted our graduates empowered and equipped to do those things, to be explorers, to be navigators, to be leaders in this new millennium, with vision, critical thinking ability, and the ability to mobilise and make things happen. Conceiving this idea was truly a beautiful thing. There was much romance, courting, seduction, fantasising and foreplay. It was a wondrous thing as we courted and played and tested our new ideas. We were seduced by the new world order we wanted for our tamariki. We fantasised about how school could be. We basked in the glow of it all. And in 2010, we called our whānau together to start testing our ideas, to see if anyone else wanted what we wanted. The response was overwhelmingly positive. We were not alone in our fantasies. If necessity is the mother of invention and discontent the father of progress, we had mums and dads yelling at us to hurry up and just do it. It was now the beginning of 2011. We had dreamed the dream, consulted the whānau, and we were ready to move to the next step, to actually conceive this child. And then the earth moved under our feet, which is not normally a bad thing when you're in the act of conceiving. Reo Moko woke up and the world as we knew it in Christchurch changed forever. This could have been the end of our story, but in the aftermath, Before the dust had even settled, we met with the ministry in April 2011. So February's the earthquake, we took a deep breath for 2 months, and then we went to the ministry. And we pitched our idea. It was a risky move, but they wanted solutions. We saw an opportunity. Māori education was already in crisis before the earthquakes. Why put back what was there? Here was a chance to make some seismic shifts in education for our whānau. The land moves and shakes, so too does education. Time for a shake-up, we thought. The response was immediate and encouraging. How quickly can you get an application into us? I slam the table and I say, 1 week. My mates around me do a big pukana at me. We'd had lots of talks and discussions, but we had nothing on paper. But anyway, 7 sleepless nights later, we delivered our printed and bound 89-page Section 156 application to the ministry to establish the world's first pā wānanga, te pā o rā kaihautu. The foreplay and conception was officially over and the gestation period began. I would like to say that it all went smoothly from there and we were open the next year. But of course that didn't happen. Only happens in fairy tales. It took another 3 years before we were finally approved by the Honourable Dr. Peter Sharples, the Associate Minister of Education. I can tell you 3 years in gestation is excruciatingly long time with a child inside kicking furiously to get out. So let's recap. We've had 18 months of foreplay, 1 week in conception, and 3 years in gestation. We're pretty worn out by now. Then there was 1 more year of hard labour. The hard labour was in hiring the staff, preparing a site, that's another whole chapter, getting all our policies and procedures in place, and finally on the 26th of January 2015, Te Pā o Rā Kaihautu was finally born. Almost 6 years in the production, and just so we're clear, no one was paid in the making of this production. It was a total labour of love by whānau who just simply wanted more for their kids. It's 2.5 years on since we opened. There are many firsts in our first year. First smile, first poo, first word, first step. It was another sleep-deprived year for all of us, for the staff, for the board, and even some of our kids, as we learnt to hold, feed, burp, and change this newborn. We had to protect it from the outside world. There were those that were not necessarily sure a new baby was such a good thing. And there were those that wanted to tell us how to raise this new child. We moved house in our first year too, because we fought for more space. We had already almost doubled in size in 6 months from opening, much to the surprise of the ministry, who thought we'd fill 1 classroom and then be quiet. We're now in the terrible twos, 2.5 years on, doing the crawl walk thing. We're getting steadier on our feet, but still needing constant attention. One of the things we've learnt is that much of what we do out of habit or because that is how it's always been done, even if it's not working or just straight dumb. We tell our kaimahi as often as we can, there are only 3 rules here. Don't break the kids, don't break the law, L-A-W, and don't break the law, L-O-R-E. After that, try everything. We need to do what works for our whānau, not what everyone else is doing. There were no laws saying we must wear expensive, ugly uniforms. So we aimed for beautiful and affordable. There were no laws saying you must sit in straight rows at school desks and chairs, so we threw them all out. So where are we now? The house we are in is already too small. The whānau has grown up so quickly. with over 240 tamariki on site now. We are working now to build a bigger house, a village in fact, that broadens beyond education to incorporate full wraparound support for our whānau, because we know that unless we address the underlying social, housing and health conditions that have persistently defeated the many well-meaning but largely ineffective pilots, programs and interventions that have been tried on us over many generations, our children will not succeed. The journey is far from over and the dream for our children is forever expanding. It's an exciting time for us, and rather than me tell you how this all looks in practice, I've brought some of our punonga here to share a week in the pā. So can I introduce to you Jasmine Mahara? Hei whia koe, Jasmine. Oh, right in front of my eyes. Come up. So last weekend I took 3 of our punonga up to Wellington to the TEDx talks up there, and Jasmine was one of our punonga that came, and at midday, the announcer at the TEDx talks, people know TED Talks and how they're just amazing speeches that you watch all day. In the middle of the day, the announcer goes, we're going to give the opportunity to 10 people in the audience to come up here and do a 60-second TED Talk. So the girls rush off and they come back and they're all giggling and laughing, and I says, what have you done? And they go, oh, Jasmine's written up that she wants to do a TED Talk. And I look at her, I look at the people all around us. There's 1,000 people at this at St James Theatre, and I'm having palpitations for her. And I'm thinking, you can count on your hand the number of brown faces in that room, even less under 20-year-olds. You're going to get picked. And of course she did. And these kids, they just keep blowing me away for the confidence that they have to get up and do that. At that age, I would have been doing everything in my power to not be anywhere near a mic on a stage. But these kids did that. So I'm going to introduce Jasmine now, and she's going to tell you about a day in the pā, and then I'll introduce you to Hene Amaru, who's put together a little video for us. So, kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Jasmine and I'm one of the senior students that goes to Te Pā o kaihautu. And unlike Whairangi Mā, I didn't prepare my speech. I'm just going to speak from my heart. And just like her, I'm very passionate about Te Pā and how far it has come and how far it is growing. And I'm just going to speak to you about the amazing opportunities that we get given and how different we are than a normal school. Although we aren't comparing ourselves to a normal mainstream school, I just like to tell you we are different. So confidence, tū ki te ao tauana, stand strongly and confidently within the world, is a big thing that Te Pā offers, you know, to be confident within yourself, who you are and what you want to be. We get the privilege to learn about who we are, and our kaiarahi help grow and give us the path that we want to take on within our future. So the opportunities we have been given, we go to National Kapahaka, we get to do manu kōrero, we get to go out on trips every second Friday. Our babies grow up and they, from little kids to big rangatahi like I am, we are given this amazing opportunity to just be who we are at our pā. It's not any expectation you have to be, like, you know, any Māori statistics are negative, but at our pā, we're not trying to be those, you know, expectations, we're just trying to be who we are. So we start off with karakia in the morning, we do mata ora, we all have breakfast together, got to do the dishes, you know, got to do the dishes once you're finished. Start class, you know, we do deal every Tuesdays to Thursdays. Together we break up into our own little groups of our deal levels, you know, and how you can speak, and we just learn a lot of things about that. Then we get into our classes, do our mahi. Right now we're working on NCEA, you know, got to do the mahi, get the treats, you know. Then we have lunch together, and we have beautiful cooks at our school that actually make it from hand, all beautiful kai we have. got to do the dishes again, you know. After that, back into class. But it's not like any normal class, you know. We're not sitting there at a desk having to sit down, listen to what the teachers say. We get to talk about what we want to do, you know. It's more learning. It's a doing kind of learning. We do more than we just have to sit there, you know, and just write things down. We actually do the learn. And it's pretty weird to say, you know, but that. And myself, as the new te pā grows and we get the new structured building, we're not going to be here because it's going to be in another couple of years' time, you know, the ministry's choices and things. But I'm very lucky to have a say and to be able to just stand here and talk to you guys today about te pā itself, because it is very different and I'm very lucky to go there. And also, just this amazing opportunity to express who I am and where I come from. So our future is going to feel nothing like a normal school. It's going to expand and it's going to grow, and I can't wait for that to come. It feels like it's just peeking through already. So I'd just like to say thank you for listening. To ki te ao tauana, stand confidently within the world and who you are, and just enjoy education, because that's what I love doing. Thank you.
Mauri e te wharae, ko hene amru tōku ingoa, he ri tēnei no ngā tine. So I was given the task to make a film about a day at the pā. Pretty much I went through all the puna, I went to our babies, nōku te ao, and you know, incorporated every aspect, hopefully, in my video. Unfortunately, I couldn't get any of like the outdoor education stuff we do, but yeah, hopefully you enjoy the video.
Kabuta ne koe nā, kabuta ne koe